What would you do if a terrifying entity was slowly approaching you, not hiding in the shadows, not trying to scare you with a horrifying demonic form, nor making you jump and scream? It suddenly appears in broad daylight, in the midst of a crowd, in an extremely ordinary form. No one else but you can see it, no one believes what you say, you can't call it by its proper name, can't describe a specific form, nor find any written documentation about this creature. All you can do is run and keep running until you feel safe enough. That's all that happens to Jay in the movie It Follows, released in 2014. This entire horrifying nightmare stems from her having sex with Ho, right after which Jay was told by her boyfriend about an unidentified, unnamed creature following her. Ho emphasized that it will walk, slowly and deliberately, straight to the person being haunted. The only way to escape the curse is to have sex with another person of the opposite sex. If the victim dies, it will continue to haunt the previous person. And so on until it kills the person who started the whole story. It Follows has quickly become the subject of countless film critics' analysis and interpretation, becoming an allegory for the unsafe and unhealthy sexually transmitted diseases. Still, there are countless unanswered questions, so in this video, let's dissect the hidden details in the work. And not to keep you waiting any longer, let's start together. One of the essential points in constructing the film's setting is shaping the space and time for the entire story, from which the audience can clearly identify the sequence of events or accurately grasp the time when the characters act. However, this seems to not exist in It Follows. The film not only avoids setting the time frame for events but also actively conceals any clues from the audience. First, we see Zara, Jay's friend, sitting reading a book on a device that looks like a smartphone. However, the presence of this modern electronic device contrasts with the old TV with rabbit ears antennas, something we often see in the 60s and 70s. Other characters are watching it in a room. In a scene where Ho realizes he is being followed by a monster, he quickly pulls Jay out of the movie theater, and at this point, the audience has a chance to see the movie being screened is Charade, starring the actress Audrey Hepburn in 1963. Once again, this time frame becomes inappropriate when Greg appears next to the incredibly modern designed refrigerator. Along with that, the weather in the film seems unclear. The first time Jay appears, she is swimming in the backyard pool. However, when hanging out with Ho, the characters are wearing sweaters and thick coats. This breaks the film's spatial and temporal conventions, and the audience cannot determine when the story actually takes place. Explaining his film, director and screenwriter David Robert Mitchell shared that the entire idea of the film comes from his childhood recurring nightmare about an indistinct, shapeless monster that continuously follows him slowly. The non-linear space and time make this entire horrifying event like a nightmare, and in that nightmare, we cannot defeat the monster. Everything can happen, no matter how illogical it may be, which is why the characters, no matter how far they try to run, cannot escape the terrifying monster that, even though it moves slowly, can still find them. They can run but cannot hide from it, can attack but cannot harm it. One of the distinctive features of It Follows is that the haunting monster of Jay and Ho does not have a specific form but constantly transforms. Sometimes it appears in the form of men and women, sometimes as a child, and sometimes as an old man. Why does this terrifying entity always change like this? The first time Jay looks at the monster when it is in the form of a young naked girl. At night while at home again, Jay sees it approaching her again, trembling as it walks closer to her, its hands seemingly reaching out behind, with bruised eyes and lips. Jay is terrified, runs upstairs, and when she opens the door, she sees it in the form of a tall man. Why does it change its appearance so drastically in such a short time? It seems that the appearance of the monster reflects the chaotic inner turmoil of the victim it is pursuing. After being drugged by Ho and tightly bound to a chair, Jay developed a state of fear of physical harm. Hence, it appeared to her in the form of two women, one naked and the other showing signs of previous abuse, as an allegory for the unsafe relationship Jay engaged in with her boyfriend. Just like the physical and mental injuries Jay was facing, it then realized Jay's panic and fled before the overwhelmingly powerful entity, beyond her comprehension, so it quickly changed its form, becoming an oversized man. This physical domination not only subjected Jay to mental attacks but also rendered her incapable of resisting physically. The monster also disguised itself as Zara, precisely at the moment when she felt safe with her friends, causing both Jay and the audience to feel panicked. Now the monster can disguise itself as anyone if it wants to approach its prey, and in the final confrontation between Jay and the monster, we realize it disguised itself as her father. Why didn't Jay want to tell Kelly about the monster's appearance? Why was she so frightened? The monster also disguised itself as Zara, precisely at the moment when she felt safe with her friends, causing both Jay and the audience to feel panicked. Now the monster can disguise itself as anyone if it wants to approach its prey, and in the final confrontation between Jay and the monster, we realize it disguised itself as her father. Why didn't Jay want to tell Kelly about the monster's appearance? Why was she so frightened? A rather peculiar thing related to Jay's family that we might have overlooked is the infrequent appearance of her parents in the film, along with the neighbors' hesitant attitudes on the night Jay was attacked by Ho. Throughout the scenes, Jay and Kelly's mother only briefly appear, and we never get a clear look at her face, but it's not difficult to guess she's an alcoholic, as there is always a bottle of alcohol present whenever she appears, along with the absence of the girl's father. Why does he only appear in the picture hanging in Jay's room and in the form of the monster at the end of the film? As mentioned, the monster always disguises itself as Jay's inner fears, and her father is one of those fears. It's highly probable that her father committed suicide when the sisters were very young, thus creating a psychological shadow looming over the other family members. And the entire neighborhood seems wary of Jay's family situation, drowning the girl's mother in alcoholism. The monster dug deep into the darkest and most haunting past of her family. Perhaps when Jay realized she was becoming a target, she didn't tell her mother or inform Kelly of its final form because she didn't want her mother and sister to face the pain of losing a loved one again. Greg appears as a handsome, charming, and somewhat reckless guy. He is full of confidence, almost a spiritual leader for the group in every situation, providing shelter, weapons, and rallying everyone to fight against the monstrous creature. However, Greg does not believe in its existence, denying all the stories about the invisible monster that only Jay sees. In one scene we see Greg glancing at Zara's feet. When she climbs high to find things, he also continuously glances at Jay, but that is not a look of concern but rather the desire of improper thinking. With young girls. So very quickly, Greg agreed to have sex with Jay, because this was what he wanted for a long time, not from the kindness of wanting to help. In the end, Greg was killed by the monster. In his mother's form, when Jay ran into the room, she saw him holding Gre's hand tightly and acting almost like he was having sex with him. Just like Jay's father, this scene creates many questions. Why did it disguise itself as Greg's mother and kill him in this way? As analyzed above, the monster's appearance reflects the chaotic inner mind of its victim. Are pursuing. Could it be that in the past, Greg and his mother had a conflict, or did she have abusive behavior towards her son, or could it be that the monster's way of killing victims is a way of punishing all the sins committed by teenagers? Infected, the young girl at the beginning of the movie was murdered by it in a barbaric manner. However, when attacking Greg, this did not happen, because Greg was inherently a liberal person, a young man who always had unhealthy thoughts about the girls around him. So he received the same death. One of the most interesting scenes in the movie is when Jay learns that he has been pursued by a terrifying entity. Jay's teacher is reading the poem The Love Song of Alfred about a rich middle-class man who has no feelings for anyone. The whole poem is about a person who begins to have a sense of himself. About the meaning and value of life. That's why the evil creature approached Jay in the form of a sick old woman, representing the fear in Jay's heart. That is the fear of old age, of illness, and most importantly of death. Is that awareness coming from the fact that she can now die at any time? Or is it just the deepest fear in every human mind? Ho said, she could easily pass the monster on to others, and because she is a girl, it will be easier, which makes it even easier. Made Jay feel his self-worth was lowered. Overcoming the image of STDs, the monster became the image of death, of helplessness, of physical desire and repressed emotions. After Greg died, we see Jay looking at the three boys on the small boat. She immediately takes off her clothes and goes into the water. The scene immediately changes and we see Jay driving home, with wet hair. That sudden change makes us feel confused, and was forced to imagine what happened on the small boat, whether she wanted to pass on this horrifying obsession to others. Although it was not certain whether Jay had a relationship with the three boys or not, when having witnessed the entire horrifying journey that Jay is going through, we all see how much she wants to escape this entity. It is very likely that Jay let her fear control her and decided to let herself go. This also partly explains Jay's panic when he saw a naked man standing on the roof looking at him. Now she is not only responsible for Greg's death, but also the three strange men on a boat in the middle of the sea. And that's the guilt Jay will carry with him for the rest of his life. It's not just Greg who has an inappropriate attitude. Throughout the movie, we constantly see images of teenage girls and boys stalking Jay. The first time Jay appears, we see her in a swimming group, enjoying her private space alone. However, on the other side of the fence, two boys were secretly peeping. They didn't stop there, they also recklessly climbed up on the roof to peek at the wire through the bathroom window. The violation of life. That individual sketched a portrait of the living situation of modern women. They always have to face invisible pressure, that they will become victims of stalking behavior, evil and indecent thoughts of the opposite sex, the fear that was previously expressed by the monster. Since, when attacking her in Greg's cabin, it has transformed into the shape of a child in puberty, destroyed the door, the protective device that creates privacy in every family, and poked its head in. That image makes us terrified. Physical desire, which sometimes men cannot control, and when Jay seems to have escaped it, the evil entity appears again, and this time in the form of Greg, the more mature version of the boys curious about gender. Finally, to escape the monster's clutches, Jay had sex with Paul, something she had refused to do throughout the entire movie. It's clear that Paul loves Jay, but does she love him? Unlike Greg, we now see that Jay is the one taking the initiative. This shows us that Paul is inexperienced in sex. Jay's initiative seemed to come from his own desire to get rid of the creature that was clinging to him, and pass it on to Paul. In the end, Paul was no longer the innocent guy. We see him driving along the street and looking at the prostitutes standing on the side of the road, but get the idea that he will pass that entity on to them. The passage that Zara read was the answer to the entire horrifying event that the character was facing. The physical injuries were nothing compared to the mental trauma they would carry throughout their lives. Become a link in an endless loop, and at the same time they also become monsters when they infect innocent people with that evil entity. At the end of the movie, Jay and Paul hold hands and walk down the street. That could be a sweet ending, but from behind someone is slowly walking towards them. Is that the scary curse that has returned, or is it simply the man walking? Nothing is certain and there are no answers, but the image of a person gradually approaching has become a metaphor for the fact that, even if they have truly escaped the nightmare, deep in their subconscious of every human being, it is always there, waiting for the day to return and engulf them in despair. There are two images that often appear in the film, which are the appearance of the water element and the car. Jay once told Ho about imagining being old enough to sit in a car with the man he loves, hold hands and listen to music on the radio. And Greg described how he became interested in driving around, where they could secretly use illegal substances, have sex with their lovers or go wherever they wanted. The car has become a symbol of youth, of the bohemian lifestyle of teenagers in the film, and the image of water in the film has gone against most norms of the normal proliferation and development of cultures. Culture. Now the water has taken on the image of restlessness, turbidity is invading the innocent and immature soul. That's also how Jay saw the clear water of the swimming pool gradually being dyed red by the monster's blood. In other words, this was the moment Jay realized most clearly about the cruel circle of the curse, which she is a part of. It Follows is not a movie about the monster in the old books, and in the end the characters cannot find a way to defeat it. They only know how to run as fast as possible. Good. Stay away from what is following you, it is meaningless. The movie is a true story about despair, the feeling of loneliness when no one can help the victims fight against the supernatural entity. However, the absence of father and mother figures heightens the insecurity, turning It Follows into a parable about the loss of teenagers in their adulthood. Many questions and doubts, they can survive, but part of their soul is gone. The nightmare begins with a lack of understanding about a safe and healthy sex life. Death becomes the center. And the guilt is the only thing left at the end, and that's all I thought about when watching this wonderful horror work. If you have any new opinions or perspectives for the movie, don't hesitate to leave a comment so we can discuss further together. For now, hello and see you soon.